Hey everyone, it's Christina here. If you have struggled to lose weight and keep it off, then today's video is for you. So I'm going to talk about a different way to approach weight loss other than most of the typical diets that are out there that will really help you lose weight in a healthy and sustainable way and will help you, give you the tools to keep the weight off for good. So I'm curious, tell me how many of you can relate to this, but I talk to people every single week who literally feel like they've tried all the different diets out there, Weight Watchers and counting calories, low carb, keto, intermittent fasting. And most people feel like, they can go on a diet and lose weight and have some success, but then something happens. Something causes them to start straying slightly from the plan, and before they know it, they're completely off track and the weight starts coming back on. And then they're so frustrated with themselves that they feel like they failed once again. So let me know. I'm curious if you can relate to that diet roller coaster that is so common for so many people. So just tell me in the comments or hit the like button if you can relate to that at all. Because here's something to think about. Before I dive into this other approach I want to share with you, I want you first to think about the fact that research shows us that 95% of diets do not work. Think about that for a minute. 95% of the time when somebody goes on a diet, they do not lose weight and keep it off, which is crazy. So what I would ask you to consider is if 95% of people aren't successful on the diets, maybe it's not actually your fault that the diet didn't work. Maybe there's something fundamentally wrong with how all of these diets are structured. Maybe they're not set up in a way to set us up for lasting, sustainable success. And so what if instead of counting calories or going back to Weight Watchers or trying low carb or trying the new fad, whatever it is, keto or intermittent fasting or whatever, what if instead we just took a totally different approach? Because after working with so many people who have struggled to lose weight, what I've seen over and over is that most of these traditional diets focus solely on telling you what to eat or what not to eat, or how much to eat, like how many calories, how many carbs. And I think that that's valid to an extent. We need to eat foods that fuel our body well, and we can't overeat and expect to lose weight. But it's not enough. 95% of the time, it's not working for people. And so what we need to do, and what I've made it my mission to do, is to develop a new way to approach weight loss that actually will deliver sustainable results. And so what is missing from all of these diets is helping you figure out the answer to this question. I have people tell me this, I would say probably at least once a week or a couple times a month. But people will tell me, I have all the information. I know what's healthy. I know what's not healthy. I've read different articles or books. I've listened to podcasts. I know what I need to do, but I'm just not doing it. I just can't make myself eat healthy. I can't make myself avoid the ice cream at the end of the day or the soda or whatever it is. And so what we need to do, in addition to knowing what to eat, we also need to figure out how do we change our habits and have a better relationship with food so that we eat for fuel, so that we don't eat because of a habit or because of emotions or because of thoughts, but instead we're eating because we're actually hungry. So once we can work on our relationship with food and eat for fuel the majority of the time, we can reduce the emotional eating, reduce the overeating, and that is the key to having sustainable weight loss. I truly think very, very few percent of people, the statistics that I shared show maybe 5% of people are successful without this key piece. And so that's what I want to share with you today. What does this other approach look like that you could take and have better success with? So let's go over these 4 steps that really truly will help you get to the root of the problem. And so just as a quick side note, this is part 4 of a 4-part series that I've been doing over the last few weeks on emotional eating. So if you missed any of the other videos, you can definitely still watch this one. It will make sense. But I do encourage you to go back and check out the videos, part 1, 2, and 3. Each of them are like maybe 15. I think one is 25 minutes long. They're not super long. So you can easily get caught up on those, and then you will have like the whole big picture of how to reduce emotional eating and overeating. Okay, so also, I guess real quick, if we have not met yet, I'm Christina Johnson. I'm a transformational nutrition coach, and I specialize in working with people who have struggled for years with dieting, with their weight, with their relationship with themselves and their body. And so I help people create a clean and mindful eating lifestyle so that they can lose weight for good, just feel more comfortable in their bodies, and have a better relationship with food where they truly feel in control around food. So let's begin and dive in to these 4 steps. So I've got my notes here so I don't forget any of them. But these are the 4 steps to really overcoming emotional eating and overeating so that you can have sustainable weight loss. So step number 1, this is where I start with all of my clients in the Total Body Reset method. So we always start with creating a clean eating foundation. So like I said, it is important to know what to eat to fuel our bodies well, because when we're eating clean and we're reducing the sugar and flour, then your cravings start to go away and your blood sugar starts to balance. And we can also begin to replenish some of the nutrients that you're probably deficient in. When we eat a lot of sugar and processed foods, we very easily become deficient in key nutrients. And oftentimes some of those key nutrients are the ones that trigger cravings. For example, when we're deficient in chromium, that causes us to crave sugar. When we're deficient in magnesium, that can cause us to crave chocolate. So we really need to refuel our body with all the important vitamins and minerals so that our cravings start to diminish. And then also, as part of that clean eating foundation, it's really important to make sure that we're eating balanced meals. So when I work with clients, we make sure we're eating balanced meals for breakfast, lunch, and dinner so that you actually feel full and satisfied for, 3, 4, 5 hours after you eat. And again, when you're full and satisfied, when you're not having so many cravings, then it is so much easier to make healthy choices. And ultimately what we're doing here is by eating clean, we're trying to balance our blood sugar, which means that you're not gonna have those energy like spikes and then crashes throughout the day. The cravings will be so much better, and you will feel like less irritable, anxious, on edge. And so I just find that when people's blood sugar is balanced, when they're eating real foods, you feel so much more calm. And so what happens is, usually before, it just, people feel like they're kind of out of control. They're just eating all the time. They're like trying to be healthy, but then, at the end of the day, it's just hard to say no to things. And the cravings and the wanting to eat just feels like too hard to say no to. But as we begin eating clean and balancing our blood sugar, instead of feeling like those cravings are out of control, it like starts to diminish. And it's not all the work though. Like that does not take care of the whole problem, but it like shrinks it down so that it feels so much easier to start diving in to more of the emotional and underlying reasons why we eat. And so that's why I start with the clean eating foundation. It really truly is step 1. And there's very specific things we need to do. It's not just about like, eating clean or going gluten-free. It's about having the balanced meals and avoiding the things that will spike our blood sugar. Okay, so moving on to step number 2, we need to become aware of how often you eat when you're not actually hungry. So this was the topic of part 1 of this series, so you can go back and listen to that for more information. But in a nutshell, there are times when you eat because you are physically hungry. So like your stomach is empty, maybe it's growling, you haven't eaten for a few hours, like it is time to eat, and your body needs that food for energy, for fuel. And when we're eating because we're physically hungry and eating for fuel, we're choosing food that's going to fuel our body well. You know, maybe we're eating some like good healthy meat and some vegetables, maybe a sweet potato. So that is physical hunger. But then there are all these other times where you just want to eat. You're not actually physically hungry, but you eat because, you know, you're tired or bored, or, you know, because you just want something. And so step number 2 is to just become aware every time you eat of if it's physical hunger or some kind of emotional hunger or wanting to eat. So we really have to become aware of that, because you can't change anything until you realize how big of an issue it is. And when I talk to most of the people that I work with, they find that they did not realize how often they were eating when they weren't actually hungry, when they were just eating for, you know, for one reason or another. And then sometimes we can justify it to ourselves. We're like, well, I'm not going to have, you know, the Snickers bar, but instead I'm just going to have an orange, which, yes, an orange is an amazing, healthy choice, but it still goes back to the question of are you actually hungry? Do you need to eat? Or is there some underlying reason that we need to address? Okay, so that's step number 2, is just becoming aware of physical hunger versus emotional hunger. Then step number 3 is where it gets kind of fun. We need to determine what are those underlying reasons or triggers why you want to eat. So if you're not actually physically hungry, then why are you wanting to eat? Because it's more than food just tastes good. Like there's more to it than that. And there are like many reasons why we are triggered to eat. But ideally, the goal here is that 90% of the time we are eating because of physical hunger. But I think in actuality, probably 50% or more of the time that most people eat is for something other than physical hunger, which means if you're eating when you're not even hungry, that is extra food that your body does not need for fuel. So your body doesn't get a chance to burn any of the stored body fat because you're constantly feeding it all of this extra food that it can use. So it's not about just calories in, calories out, but we do need to not eat all the time when we're not actually hungry. So here's just an example of some of the underlying reasons why we tend to eat when we're not actually hungry. And I'd love to know, let me know in the comments, what are some of the triggers for you? What are some of the things that cause you to eat when you're not hungry? For some people, I found that, like I said with part 1, sometimes it is just our cravings are so strong, or we're deficient in certain nutrients, or our hunger hormones are off balance because our blood sugar is not stable, or we're stressed or not getting enough sleep. So sometimes there's those physiological reasons that are causing us to want to eat. But then, you know, there's also just bad habits that we've created. Maybe you're just in the habit every night after putting the kids to bed, or every night when you're sitting on the couch, of eating something. Or there's also so many emotional reasons why we eat. So this could be just not wanting to deal with our feelings. We'd rather eat and stuff it down so we can ignore how we're feeling. Maybe we're eating because we feel on edge, or something's bothering us, or we just feel restless, and we think that food will kind of make us feel happier, more calm, comforted. So there's all kinds of emotional reasons: boredom, loneliness, grief, sadness. All of those things can cause us to eat. But then in addition, there's all these thoughts that we have, and these thoughts are so ingrained in us that they just feel like truth to us, and we don't even always know they're there. They're thoughts that pop up in our mind in literally like a fraction of a second. So thoughts like, I just deserve a treat right now, you know, or I need to unwind with a glass of wine, or somebody offers you some food and you just feel like, well, I can't say no, I don't want to make them mad. Or maybe it's this underlying belief that we can't waste food. You know, once you buy something, you can't waste it or throw it away. And so there's all these different things that can trigger our want to eat. Excuse me. Ooh. So I'm curious, as I go through that, are any of those relating to you? Which ones do you feel like might be triggering you to eat? And in my experience, most people can identify like the top layer or two of reasons. Like I'm sure there's a few things that come to mind of why you eat when you're not hungry. But my guess is, and this is based on like hundreds of people that I've talked with, there are also some underlying beliefs and feelings that are so deeply rooted in you, things that maybe you've thought or believed since you were a child, that it's really hard for you to see them. I imagine it as, have you seen that diagram of an iceberg? So it's like the iceberg that's covered in water and only the tip of it is showing. Well, the tip of it are, maybe like you have these bad habits. Maybe you're a stress eater. Maybe you're addicted to sugar. Like those are the obvious reasons why we want to eat. And then under the water, there's another layer of habits that maybe once you think about it more or dig in a little bit, they start to come to mind. Like that maybe you are lonely, or maybe there's some emotional eating going on. And so it takes a little more digging and you can uncover those. But then I also think there's this deep layer under the water that is really hard to uncover on our own. These are thoughts and beliefs that we have that are so ingrained in us that we don't often question them. Or it's things, like from, just things that have just become patterns over time. Or I know this is one that people often think like, nah, I don't think this is me, unless you've done this kind of work before. But a lot of people, like the need to eat stems from a feeling of not feeling worthy, not feeling like we're good enough, not feeling like we have to achieve in order to be successful, feeling like we have to be perfect and get things exactly right. Like there's all these deep-seated personality kind of traits and beliefs that shape our behavior. And so it's like these layers. And I think the work that we need to do is just little by little, like start chipping away at some of those layers and figuring out what are the reasons why you eat when you're not actually hungry. And I know, like for me in the past, this has seemed like work that I just don't want to do. It feels hard or just, I don't know, not very fun. But this is what is going to get you sustainable weight loss. We have to do this mindset work. We have to deal with our feelings. Otherwise, you can willpower your way through a diet for a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, but these other reasons will always come back to the surface eventually. And that's when the plan starts to slip. Okay, so I'm going to move on. I think I went a little bit of a bunny trail there. But number 4, the fourth step to this approach to overcoming emotional eating and overeating is to find strategies now that actually address the root of the problem that you discovered in step 3. So this is getting to the real reason why you eat when you're not actually hungry. And so like I said, it starts in step 1 with that clean eating foundation. But then it's also, as we go back to that iceberg example, it's like starting to address all the different layers. So starting with maybe you just have some bad habits. Well, maybe you need to have a new routine. If you are, let's say, like if it's emotional eating, you're eating because you're tired or bored or lonely or stressed, we need to figure out what strategies are specifically going to get to that root cause so that we don't turn to food instead. I was talking with a client just today who was talking about, her need or desire to go to sugar. And she came home from work, I think it was, yesterday or the day before, and she was tired and she just really wanted some sugar. I mean, how many of us get tired or droopy, have an energy crash, and we just like want some sugar or caffeine to pick us up? Well, what she realized is she knew she was tired, so instead of going for some sugar, she sat down and took a short rest and got rejuvenated that way. So if we're tired, why not actually take a rest instead of just eating some sugar that's going to cause a crash and make us feel more tired later on? Or if we're feeling stressed, why eat when we could do something else that could actually address our stress levels and take care of the problem instead of just eating, which is just a band-aid and usually makes us feel worse in the end. So that is step 4, is really knowing that when you want to eat, that food is serving a purpose in your life, but it's just a placeholder for something else. So let's figure out what is really going to make you happy or less stressed or more energized, so that we can address the real problem instead of putting Band-Aid solutions of food on it. So let me know in the comments. I'm curious if any of those particular 4 steps are ones that you feel like you would like to work on. So just as a quick recap, step number 1 was to start with that clean eating foundation and balancing your blood sugar. Step number 2 is just become aware of how often you eat when you're not physically hungry. Step number 3 is determine what are those underlying reasons why you eat when you're not hungry. So figure out what is the real problem. And then step number 4 is to create a plan to address those underlying issues. So this really, this is the overall process that I'm using when I work with clients. And it's really like this 2-pronged approach of figuring out what to eat, what most traditional diets do with a different spin, but then also figuring out why am I not doing what I need to be doing? And so really getting to the root of the problem, having a better relationship with food. And so ultimately what happens is that I don't know how many times I've heard people tell me they just feel this freedom from food. It's like a weight is off your shoulders when you're not thinking about food all the time, when you're not feeling guilt or shame or regret about what you ate, but you just feel more in control. You have that more positive relationship with food. And as a result of all that, the weight will just naturally come off, and you will be able to sustain it, because when those emotions come back up, when that stressful situation happens in the future, you will have the tools and strategies to know what to do instead of turning to food. And that's what we need to be able to have a sustainable weight loss approach. So if you think that this is an approach that might work for you, if you're curious just to know more about it, I would invite you to schedule a complimentary consultation with me so that we can just talk about what's going on for you, and I can assess what are the obstacles stopping you from losing weight and keeping it off. And then after we talk about that, if it seems like we both think that the total body reset method might be a good fit for you, I can just share what it would look like to work together, go over all the details, answer any questions that you might have, so that you can decide if this program feels like the answer to help you lose weight in a really healthy, sustainable way. So if you are interested in booking a call with me, it's a complimentary call. You can go to ChristinaJohnsonWellness.com/apply. I'll add that to the comments. But just go there. You'll answer a couple questions to give me some background information about you, so I have it before we talk. And then once you submit those questions, then you will be taken to a link where you can schedule a time for us to talk on my online calendar. So go grab one of those spots, and I look forward to talking to you soon and seeing what we can do together to help you lose weight and keep it off. So if you have any questions, any comments, or what your thoughts are about this 4-step approach, I would love to hear it. Put them in the comments. And that wraps up our series on emotional eating. I'm sure I'll be talking about these things again more in the future, but I hope you enjoyed the series. Let me know if you have any other questions about emotional eating, any other topics that you would like me to cover, and yeah, any thoughts that you have about it. So have a great night, and we will talk again soon.